brief recap of some of my personal highlights from each day of the conference. The first day was Hellenistic astrology. What I think was really neat that happened on that day. Yeah! We're going to recruit you, man, later on. We might as well get you stood up here. You can do whatever he wants to do, actually. Like that. Let's see. He's going to be a rock star, I think, actually. I'm teaching him to do, like, scat singing and stuff already, which is easier because he doesn't have to get the lyrics, you know. Hey, dude.
He's got Jupiter conjunct Mars like me. You give it a watch out, Moses.
He's a big Jupiter. But what was cool about the Hellenistic track is that what I really thought was cool about that we pulled off was this kind of cooperation between some people that didn't necessarily know each other very well. They didn't necessarily know if they agreed or disagreed. But we put them together. I sort of encouraged them to work together. They encouraged each other to work together. And we pulled off this really cooperative thing it's kind of unified a part of the community that maybe has, I don't know if factions is the right word, but people doing different things and are not necessarily connecting like they could. So I feel like that was a good thing that we did. On the Hindu Astrology Day, the second day of the conference, I think we showed everyone a very, very powerful, very valid, traditional form of astrology. And I think we made a good impression that, you know, all these people work together on teaching how to read these dasha systems. And I think it's a really valuable thing. Of course, I think it's really a great thing. So I'm glad that we pulled that off as well. We had a good crowd for that. On the Medieval Astrology Day, the one thing I want to pull out, is Deb Holding in here? Not right now. She was actually lecturing earlier, so she may still be talking to people. But her talk was a rather scholarly talk, if anyone was here, on the terms. But I really want to honor her for what she's doing, because she's actually trying to go back and figure out where do some of these really basic things in astrology come from. And you know how one astrologer says it's this way, and the other one says it's this way, and the other one says it's that way. As Ken likes to joke, two astrologers, three opinions. And she's really trying to reconstruct some of the history of how do these concepts, these terms come together. And it's incredibly important. I really think we should honor people that are really trying to piece together our history, where we're coming from, because that may give us real insight to do our jobs better. The fourth day of the conference, we had the broadcast from England, which was one of the highlights, if not the highlight of the conference. And I want to come back to what Rob Hand said in a little bit. We also had Rick Tarnas speak that night, and also want to honor that today we have someone who has taught thousands of grad students astrology in Rick Tarnas, who's written tremendous, tremendous books in Passion of the Western Mind and then Cosmos and Psyche, among others. And he has real academic credentials, and he's actually promoting astrology, of all things. And it's happening. It's not just a thing that we'd love to see someday. This is today. And any of us can do that if we're sort of blessed with whatever he's been blessed with. The fifth day of the conference, there were a few highlights for me. Jessica Murray, I don't know if she's still in here. Is she still in here? But when I think of her, I just go, she was just awesome. I just love that woman. She's amazing. Check out her talk if you didn't see it. Another hidden jewel was Steve Weiss. And if you didn't see his talk, check it out later. He was a hunch, an intuition. He was a replacement part. He wasn't initially on the schedule. We plugged him in for someone else. And he gave a tremendous talk that I want to bring up again in just a second actually as well. But it was a really funny talk about business astrology and bringing astrology into the business world. And also want to honor Rick Levine for having the intelligence. I love these Gemini moon people. To Cancer moon, sidereal Gemini moon, right? Gemini rising. I knew there was Gemini in there somewhere. But anyway, he was bringing in a scientific perspective, a very modern, very cutting-edge scientific perspective. And if we want astrology to be relevant, then bringing in these types of perspectives helps make us relevant to today's day and age. He does a great job with that. Today there were a lot of good talks. I do always want to honor Stephen for writing so well about astrology and for speaking so often about astrology. I don't know who the hardest working man in astrology business is, if it's Steve or Ray, but it's one of those two quite possibly. And I'm just amazed at Capricorns. I don't really have that. Leo's fun, but man, you guys are amazing. You guys work really hard. Lots of great lectures, obviously. So just a little bit of a brief history of what's happened with this conference. The first conference was about a year and a half ago. It was sort of the poo-poo platter theme, and I mean that in the best possible way. We had it under a Uranus-Mercury North Node conjunction at 16 and some change of Pisces in the tropical zodiac. And you missed your props, Deb, but I thanked you for your work with the terms in the lecture that you gave earlier in the conference. So what happened then was that we had this coming together of Uranus-Mercury North Node in Pisces, or in Aquarius in the sidereal zodiac. And the poo-poo platter approach was to say, let's put together all these types of astrology. Let's bring in a Vedic astrologer who won't take off all the Western astrologers. And let's bring in a traditional astrologer who won't take off all the modern astrologers. And let's bring in a modern astrologer who won't take off all the traditional astrologers. And actually people who are coming from a real heart-based approach to astrology who could say, look, this is all very fun and very cool and very interesting. And so what we did is we had this great big Piscean heart expansion, and the boundaries sort of dissolved between, my type of astrology and your type of astrology, and we sort of could see this great big beautiful oneness that astrology can be. We brought together the Mercury, the young people, and it was very Uranian, it was very progressive. It was North Node. So Robert Blaschke gave this sort of humbling talk about the Uranus North Node conjunction cycle, and how every time that comes around, something is seeded about what's happening in astrology for, I think it was 16 years. Does that sound right? 15 years? Okay. And I think when that happened, that Uranus North Node in Pisces, we had Rick Tarnas writing Cosmos and Psyche. Rick is Pisces. And he was speaking at NCGR around that same time when we were having our conference. It was just a few weeks earlier he did that. And I think whatever he's doing maybe is part of this time. And I think what we are doing is part of what's going on in astrology, bringing in new people, bringing in traditions, dissolving the boundaries. And so, something maybe was seeded at that point that's really important for the future. And the strategy this time was, if the first conference was the poo-poo platter, then this conference was the main course. And so we tried to say, here's if you liked Vedic astrology in the last conference, study with these great Vedic astrologers today, take workshops with them, connect with a teacher, find your path there. And one of the poignant pieces of astrology right now is Jupiter in Capricorn trining Saturn in Virgo in the tropical zodiac. And I think part of what we were doing here is, and here I have to go back to what Rob said about the future of astrology, we were looking at the tradition. We're trying to honor the traditions of astrology and sweep it into the modern trends of astrology. And I think that's maybe one of the messages that I want to have happened here this week, is that there's value in traditional astrology, and we can start to synthesize and integrate pieces of that in our own ways into our own work. Even the traditions of the organization. I mean, the Astrological Association of Great Britain had their 50th anniversary conference and broadcasted their commencement address to us in Sedona, Arizona. And that's tradition too. Big time. Big time tradition. We heard from a number of them when they lectured to us. And that also gives us a sense that we're part of an international community, not just an American community. And that astrology continues to grow throughout all these different cultures. So back to what Rob was saying about where astrology is going. And if I'm not misunderstanding him, one of the things that he said that we may be doing is synthesizing traditional forms of astrology with modern forms of astrology, forming a more coherent, integrated type of astrology, philosophically, technically, and so on and so forth. And realizing that from the modern tradition that we've learned that astrology can be for the purpose of self-realization. And so to take and form a grand unity of some sort, and to work towards that rather, and to see it going towards this purpose of a higher realization. I think that put into words something that I wish I had said. And that I think if there is as good an idea, for my money, for what we should be doing as astrologers, that's probably it. And considering that Rob's been around the block a few times astrologically, I think he's qualified to be tuned into where we probably need to be going. And an interesting counterpoint to that was actually Steve Weiss's talk, which I recommend, because he showed very fun, very lighthearted things, even Pluto generations, and how he uses some very, very simple types of astrology to get into more mainstream audiences, looking at business astrology, just making it real simple. What's the Pluto and Leos like, and how can you talk to a bunch of business people about what the Pluto and Leos need as a generation? And so astrology can be very profound and unified, and for the purpose of self-realization. And on the other hand, it can be very simplified and fun and light, so that we can reach a bigger audience, all at the same time. So I think if I can be on a soapbox for just a moment, I think that one thing that I would say, based on what I've experienced at this conference and in my experience of astrology, that for people who come from a more modern framework, and can you pass that mic to Eric real quick? Thanks. That for people who come from a more modern framework, that something I would just like to say is that there have been people giving their lives, their heart and soul, and all their astrological blood, sweat, and tears to studying astrology for centuries. There have been people who lived in very different places and very different times from us who put a lot of work into being astrologers and studying the history or the tradition of astrology. And I think that we have ignored that a little bit more than is appropriate. And I think of what we're doing, and let's say if what we're doing is important, and let's say astrology went through another dark age where we lost what we were doing here, and then 500 years from now astrologers were trying to figure out how this stuff works, and they didn't want to listen to what guys like Rob Hand were saying today. Wouldn't that be pretty dumb? I mean, to not try to learn from the incredible experience of people who have gone before you, who have learned great things, to just ignore that is kind of almost a definition of stupidity, I think. And we should be aware that if we want to have a tradition, if we want to have a lineage, we need to honor it. We need to honor the astrologers who have gone before us. And, a lot of us are probably reincarnated from those guys anyway, so, we're really promoting our own stuff in a sense, But I hope that we do that we respect that. If we want to be listened to, if we want others to listen to us, we need to listen to others. And if we want people to hear what our astrology is, we need to listen to what people have said in other places and other times. And my soapbox statement to perhaps more traditional astrologers is, I think we probably could also realize that at some point someone made all this stuff up. I mean, it's all been made up in various pieces, realized, discovered, researched, cognized, intuited, revealed, however you want to say it, but it happened with people just like us. They were just living at a different time and place. And revelation is an ongoing process in astrology. It happens today just as it happened thousands of years ago. And so, the modern theory becomes the traditional wisdom, down the road. And so what people are doing today is really valuable too. And we should pay attention and use our common sense. We all have wisdom. Everyone that's speaking has some wisdom, has something to offer. Astrology seems to me like this thing that someone, there's one prevalent thought that astrology was sort of cognized, the houses and a lot of these things were sort of theoretically, philosophically cognized by perhaps one or a small group of people at one point, and then it sort of, life was breathed into it, and it sort of became this thing, became this living being in some way. And we're all, I think, co-creating astrology. We have this relationship to this invisible muse or thing that is astrology, and as we reveal it, it speaks back to us, and as we try to understand it, it reaches to us. And so it's an ongoing process of discovery. What is astrology, and how can it become increasingly relevant to each generation of people? There's a lesson, I think, to take from Jyotish, the Hindu tradition. Now, they have the benefit of having been geographically in the same place, which is, quite a benefit. But if I look at them and I think, why has their tradition sustained itself in a way that ours hasn't? Now, there's other reasons, but one of them, I think, is that their astrology was surrounded in a spiritual matrix, a genuine, ancient spiritual framework that had the purpose of helping people to attain self-realization. I think this is really important, that to me, the good karma, appropriately enough, of that tradition has sustained it. And enabled it to be a sort of lineage that has existed for a long time. And this goes back to, I think, what Rob was saying, that astrology can be for this purpose of self-realization. And if we want our astrology to live and grow, perhaps we need to be really, really, really clear and intentional that that's what this is all about. And that if astrology is continually given in this language of a positive, uplifting, spiritual type of thing, that may give us the good momentum to continue to have a tradition that actually grows and thrives. A couple things other than, self-realization is a great term, I think, for us to use because it's positive enough but generic enough that two people may have two different ideas of what self-realization means, and they could both be very positive understandings. So I think it's a great term that maybe we could focus on. I really, I'm completely following Rob's lead on this. And I think for people who are astrologers, it's a service, it's a karma yoga, it's a way of spiritually serving other people. And another term I love, for the purpose of astrology is happiness, promoting happiness in human beings. A financial astrologer tries to help someone not lose their money so they can feed their family and be happy. And a locational astrologer tries to help someone to find a place where they can be happier. And a horary astrologer tries to guide someone through decisions that they make so that their lives can be happier. And a psychological astrologer helps people to understand their nature and their relationships. And an evolutionary astrologer helps someone understand where they may be growing as an entity, as a soul. All of this is helping human beings to become more fulfilled, more happy. And if I can imagine a world where everyone is happy, I think that would be pretty good. I think that would be okay, So we can contribute to that. And that's part of the positive spiritual vision of astrology. And I think our language needs to always reflect that. So I actually want to take a moment to have a little moment of guided, quiet meditation.
Well, can you just speak briefly to the future of the blast or how we could take this torch and keep it going forward?
So she asked me to speak about the future of the blast and how we could somehow take this torch forward. And I don't know really where it's going. And I feel like I've tried to tune into what does the community need at this point? What's going to help astrology to actually progress? And if the first conference was the poo-poo platter and the second conference is the main course, is it dessert? Do we go on a cruise together and do we, go back in the kitchen and learn how to cook the stuff? I mean, is it not enough to just eat the food, but do we need to really try to understand it a bit better? And do we need to try to, really get even deeper into the nuts and bolts? Do we need another plate? I mean, do we not eat enough this time? Is it something completely different? I don't know, really. But your feedback is going to help me to understand, where we need to go. And a feast every time. So, it could be that. The reason I handed Eric the mic is that he said something to me earlier about his experience of this conference and what you experience in terms of traditional and modern astrology. And do you want to speak briefly to that experience? Because I think this was really cool. This is the kind of thing I wanted to hear when I put this conference together.
Well, is it on?
Someone may not have turned it on.
What is it on?
Yeah, bring it back up here and I'll see if I can turn it on. And then hand me one of those little paper clips there. They have, we have to ask them to update their microphones at the center here. Yeah. No, the battery's dead on that. But come up here and take this for a sec. I'll just hold it. Yeah, like how you spoke to them, and I mean how you, in speaking to them, what they realized and what you realized, and the openness that you kind of experienced from that.
Well, I was just talking to Moses, I guess, the other day about, some of the changes that I've been through as a modern astrologer, and certainly many people here, some of you, on the outer form at times, there's been a lot of, different dialogue there, and so there can be polarizations, which could happen with oppositions. We can polarize or we can join. And I was just sharing with Moses that the number one thing that I'm taking away from this conference is that real sense of integration, that the amount that we agree upon is so gigantic. I mean, I've had a lot of philosophical conversations with many people at this conference of different backgrounds, and really there is overwhelming consensus for many things that we share. We have different techniques, different traditions, and what I've taken away with this is an enormous respect for these different paths.
And you're talking about when you sort of spoke to them, respectfully, that when you appreciated what they had to offer, they appreciated what you had to offer, and that sort of thing too, right?
Absolutely. I really sense that, and my eyes have been open for a lot of different classical techniques that are relevant to the modern practitioner, and I'm very grateful for that. And similarly, I think some of the modern perspective can also inform. I see some of the younger, Chris Brennan's a great example, someone who is bringing in, a lot about Sam Gabriel in the Veda tradition, and many others too. There's a couple of examples that this really can happen, this cross-fertilization. I think Uranus and Pisces conjunct Mercury at that conjunction is really about that, and I see it happening.
Great, thanks, man. And Lynn, can you step out for a sec? Because my new favorite human being is Lynn, and it's because of how much she loved this conference. So I'm going to just let her talk about that for a second. It's actually not just that, trust me, but I'm just kidding.
I sat here. I have been a true devotee. I walked in this room on Tuesday morning. I've not missed one speaker. I stayed peeled to the chair. I've never left.
It's impressive.
And all of the holes in my long astrological involvement, all of them got touched on. And I have to say, I've probably been to 20, 30 conferences and all of them. This has absolutely been the most incredible one I've ever come to. This was a true, feeded everything my heart and soul needed. Moses, you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think the last thing I want to do is just actually have us close our eyes for a minute, if you want to. And I've always wanted to do this. I suggested it once on an AFAN list, and a bunch of people made fun of me for it. That's back when I was a young guy that was easy to dismiss. But I've always wanted to have astrologers actually kind of meditate together on what we're doing as astrologers. So I'd like to just have a moment of just kind of this just a thought, kind of a prayer, kind of a meditation, just this vision of astrologers around the world, surrounded by a light that symbolizes doing good works and doing no harm and uplifting people in the world, and coming together to integrate our knowledge and integrate it in a healthful, harmonious, intelligent way so that we can serve humanity and promote self-realization, promote happiness in human beings. I just want to have everyone just sit with that kind of image for a bit and pool our energy just to have an intention, just to have a vision for what we're doing as astrologers. And seeing all this light coming out of the astrological community to be a blessing to humanity, to the earth, to all sentient beings. And then just a moment of gratitude to astrology, to the wisdom that we've gained from it, for the community. Just incredible gratitude for the role that astrology has played in our lives. the last thought I want to leave you with before we get in a circle and do something interesting is that great quote from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And I look at these great astrological figures that we have, and any of us can achieve great things if we set our minds to it. So the last thing I want to do is actually get up and get in a circle. And we're going to do this ancient song. It's a very sacred ancient song. Let's see. We can make some more space up here. If anyone else needs to get into the circle, you can come up here and get into the top part of the circle. So this is a very sacred ancient Sanskrit song, and it's called Happy Trails. And feel free to sing along. It goes something like this. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Happy trails to you till we meet again. All right. Okay.
Before we leave, I think we just all need to really devote all of our gratitude and love to the man who brought us all together.
Thank you. Nice. You're welcome, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.